kids feeling what I felt. The world ended. I felt like I felt guilty.
You haven't been into drink, haven't been into drugs. Fair to say that you've had a weakness for women?
I'm the male of the guilty. What did I do wrong that made my father get up and leave without explaining anything? So, species, and I went from famine to feast.
You're a little kid, and your dad comes home from work every night. But instead of wearing a suit and tie, he's covered in black and white makeup, has fake blood dripping from his mouth, and breathes actual fire on stage in front of thousands of screaming fans. For most children, this would sound like something from a scary movie. But for Sophie Simmons, this was just another normal Tuesday. Sophie is the daughter of Gene Simmons, the legendary frontman of the rock band Kiss. You know, the guy with the really long tongue who dresses up like a demon and has been rocking stages around the world for over 50 years. For most of her life, Sophie stayed pretty quiet about what it was really like growing up in such an unusual family. But recently, she's been opening up about her childhood, and let me tell you, her stories will absolutely blow your mind. What makes Sophie's story so fascinating isn't just that her dad is famous. It's how different her real family life was from what everyone expected. When people think of rock stars, they imagine wild parties, crazy behavior, and kids who grow up without any rules. But the truth about the Simmons household was completely the opposite, and it's going to surprise you in the best possible way. Sophie recently shared that growing up with Gene Simmons as a father was nothing like what people think. While millions of fans around the world knew him as this fierce, fire-breathing demon character, at home he was actually one of the most normal and strict dads you could imagine. Can you believe that? The same man who shocked audiences by spitting blood and sticking out his famous tongue was the kind of dad who made sure his kids did their homework every single night. Sophie often talks about how weird it was to see her father transform from this larger-than-life stage character into a regular dad who cared about bedtimes and chores. He says it was like living with two completely different people. During the day, he was just dad, helping with school projects and making sure she and her brother Nick ate their vegetables. But then he'd go to work, put on all that scary makeup, and become this incredible performer that millions of people came to see. The most shocking thing Sophie reveals is that her father never drank alcohol or used drugs, not even once. This is pretty amazing when you think about it, because most people assume that all rock stars live these wild, crazy lifestyles. But Gene Simmons was completely different. He was what people call a teetotaler, which means he never touched alcohol or any kind of drugs. This wasn't just something he did for show either. This was a real part of who he was, and it shaped how he raised his children. Sophie explains that her dad's strict approach to parenting came from his own childhood experiences. Gene's mother was a Holocaust survivor who came to America with nothing and had to work incredibly hard to build a new life. She taught Gene that success only comes through hard work, education, and never giving up, no matter how tough things get. These were the same lessons Gene wanted to pass on to Sophie and her brother. So while other kids might have expected the Simmons house to be filled with loud music, wild parties, and rock star behavior, the reality was completely different. Sophie grew up in a home where homework came first, where she had to earn her allowance by doing chores, and where her father constantly talked about the importance of getting a good education. It sounds pretty normal, right? Except for the small detail that her dad happened to be one of the most famous rock stars in the world. Sophie also shares some really funny stories about how her father's work ethic influenced their family life. Gene Simmons isn't just a musician. He's also an incredibly smart businessman who has turned Kiss into one of the most successful brands in entertainment history. You can find Kiss logos on everything from coffee mugs to action figures to credit cards. Sophie watched her father work constantly, always looking for new business opportunities and ways to grow the Kiss brand. But instead of this making him absent from family life, it actually taught Sophie and Nick valuable lessons about entrepreneurship and hard work. One of the most interesting parts of Sophie's childhood was being part of a reality TV show called Gene Simmons' Family Jewels. This show aired for 6 years, from 2006 to 2012, and it gave viewers an inside look at what the Simmons family was really like when the cameras were rolling. For Sophie, this meant that some of the most awkward and embarrassing parts of being a teenager were filmed and shown to millions of people on television. Sophie recently opened up about what it was really like to have cameras following her family around all the time. She said it was weird, but also became their normal way of life. Can you imagine having to film your homework time, family dinners, and even arguments with your parents? That's exactly what Sophie experienced during some of the most important years of her childhood. But here's what's really cool about Sophie's perspective on the reality show. She doesn't seem bitter or angry about it at all. Instead, she talks about how it taught her important lessons about the entertainment industry from a very young age. She learned how television shows are made, how editing works, and how different things can look on TV compared to real life. These lessons would later help her when she decided to pursue her own career in entertainment. The reality show also revealed something that surprised a lot of fans. It showed that behind all the makeup and stage performances, the Simmons family dealt with exactly the same kinds of problems that every other family faces. There were arguments about homework, discussions about chores, and typical teenage drama. The only difference was that millions of people got to watch it all happen on their TV screens. Sophie also shares some absolutely hilarious stories about the embarrassing moments that came with having such a famous father. Think about it. How would you feel if your dad was known around the world for having an incredibly long tongue and spitting fake blood? Sophie had to deal with this kind of attention everywhere she went. She tells stories about going to school events where other parents would recognize her father and want to take pictures or ask for autographs. Simple things like going to the grocery store or out to dinner became complicated because fans would approach their table asking to meet the legendary Gene Simmons. Sophie learned to handle these situations with grace and humor, but she admits it wasn't always easy. One of the funniest challenges Sophie faced was explaining her father's job to her friends and classmates. How do you tell other kids that your dad dresses up like a demon and breathes fire for a living? Sophie says that when she was really little, her father's stage persona actually scared her a bit. She didn't understand why he looked so frightening and acted so aggressive during his performances. As she got older, Sophie went through a phase where she found her father's job embarrassing. She tells stories about friends coming over and asking why her dad spit blood and had such a long tongue. During her teenage years, she sometimes wished her father had a more normal job, like being a doctor or a teacher. But as she became an adult, Sophie developed a deep appreciation for her father's artistry and understood that his stage character was just that, a character he played for entertainment. Dating was another area where having Gene Simmons as a father created some pretty interesting challenges. Sophie jokes that potential boyfriends had to be pretty brave to want to meet her dad. Can you imagine trying to make a good impression on a girl's father when that father is famous for breathing fire and looking like a demon? Sophie says that some guys were too intimidated to even try dating her once they found out who her father was. But Gene Simmons wasn't trying to scare away his daughter's boyfriends just for fun. Like any protective father, he wanted to make sure that anyone interested in dating Sophie had good intentions and would treat her with respect. The fact that he happened to have one of the most intimidating stage personas in rock history was just an added bonus when it came to keeping his daughter safe. Sophie has a great sense of humor about these experiences now. She understands that dating the daughter of a rock legend comes with unique challenges. But she also appreciates that her father's protective nature came from a place of love and caring. She's learned to find the humor in situations that might have been embarrassing or frustrating at the time. One of the most valuable things Sophie learned from her father wasn't about music or entertainment at all. It was about money and business. Gene Simmons has a very famous philosophy about wealth and success that he made sure to teach his children from a young age. His approach might sound harsh at first, but Sophie now understands how important these lessons were. Gene's basic message to his children was simple, but powerful. He would tell Sophie and Nick, "I'm rich, but you're not. you're going to have to make your own money and create your own success. This wasn't meant to be mean or discouraging. Instead, it was designed to teach them independence and self-reliance. Gene didn't want his children to grow up expecting that they could just live off his success without working hard themselves. Sophie explains that nothing was ever handed to her on a silver platter. If she wanted something, whether it was a new toy, clothes, or spending money for activities with friends, she had to earn it. This meant doing chores, getting good grades, and showing that she understood the value of hard work. While some people might think this approach was too strict, Sophie now realizes how much it helped her develop a strong work ethic and personal responsibility. The business lessons Sophie learned went far beyond just earning an allowance. She watched her father build Kiss into an incredibly successful brand worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Gene Simmons didn't just focus on making music. He understood that success in the entertainment industry required smart business decisions, careful brand management, and always looking for new opportunities. Sophie learned about marketing, merchandising, and the importance of protecting and growing a brand. She saw how her father carefully controlled the Kiss image and made strategic decisions about everything from concert tours to product licensing. These weren't just abstract business concepts. They were practical lessons that Sophie could observe and learn from every day. These business lessons have had a huge impact on Sophie's own career choices and approach to building her personal brand. She understands that talent alone isn't enough to succeed in the entertainment industry. Success also requires smart business decisions, hard work, and the ability to adapt and grow over time. As Sophie became an adult, one of her biggest challenges was figuring out how to establish her own identity while being known primarily as Gene Simmons' daughter. This is something that many children of famous people struggle with. How do you step out of your parents' shadow and prove that you have your own talents and abilities? Sophie has been very honest about both the advantages and disadvantages of having a famous father. On one hand, her last name opens doors and creates opportunities that might not be available to other people. Producers, agents, and other industry professionals are more likely to take meetings with her because of who her father is. But on the other hand, she also has to work twice as hard to prove that she deserves success based on her own talents, not just because of her family connections. Sophie decided to pursue a career in music and entertainment, but she made a conscious choice to develop her own artistic style that was separate from Kiss and her father's influence. She wanted her music to speak for itself and to build a fan base that appreciated her individual talents and perspective. This meant working extra hard to prove that she wasn't just trying to ride on her father's coattails. The relationship between Sophie and her father has evolved as she's become an independent adult. While she deeply respects his achievements and appreciates all the lessons he taught her, she's also established healthy boundaries that allow her to be her own person. Gene has been supportive of her independent career choices, which shows that his parenting philosophy of encouraging self-reliance has been successful. Sophie often talks about how grateful she is for the unique upbringing she received. Yes, it came with challenges and embarrassing moments that most kids don't have to deal with. But it also gave her incredible experiences, taught her valuable life lessons, and helped her develop the strength and independence she needed to succeed in her own right. Looking back on her childhood, Sophie sees her father's strict parenting style as a gift rather than a burden. The emphasis on education, hard work, and financial responsibility gave her a solid foundation that has served her well as an adult. The business lessons she learned have helped her navigate the entertainment industry with confidence and intelligence. Sophie's story is ultimately about family, love, and the importance of staying true to yourself no matter what your circumstances are. Despite growing up in an extraordinary situation with one of rock music's most iconic figures, she was raised with surprisingly traditional values that emphasized the importance of character, integrity, and personal responsibility. Her willingness to share these intimate details about her childhood gives us a fascinating glimpse into what it's really like to grow up as the child of a celebrity. It shows us that behind all the fame and glamour, Successful families still focus on the same basic principles that matter to everyone: love, support, education, and preparing children to succeed on their own terms. Sophie Simmons has taken the unique experiences of her childhood and used them to build her own successful career and identity. She's proven that it's possible to honor your family's legacy while still creating your own path forward. Her story is inspiring because it shows that with the right values and strong family support, anyone can overcome challenges and achieve their dreams. What do you think about Gene Simmons' approach to parenting? Do you agree with his philosophy of making his children earn their own success? Or do you think famous parents should provide more financial support to their kids? How would you handle the challenges that come with growing up in such a unique family situation? If you found Sophie's story as fascinating as we did, make sure to hit that like button and let us know in the comments what surprised you most about her childhood experiences. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest videos about the incredible stories behind your favorite celebrities and their families. Share this video with anyone who loves learning about the real lives of famous people. And we'll see you in the next video with more amazing stories from the world of entertainment. Thanks for watching.